hear me now?
Yep.
That means I'm here. So I know some of you were fretting you couldn't read that. That's a good thing because you're not supposed to. It's for me to remember that I'm here right now. Sometimes I get lost in the universe. Now, so we go from 9:10 to 10:15. Is that right? Or is that what it says on the schedule? Yep, okay. But so I've got to just remember, because I've never used PowerPoints. This is kind of like a first for me. I've been teaching for 45 years, and now that I'm retired, I'll make a confession. Last time I used notes was 1974, so I don't, I just teach through stories. That's one of the S. I didn't realize that S also stood for storytelling. So what we're going to do, the reason I wrote this down is you're supposed to have objectives and goals when you teach, right? So there's going to be 3 things that I want you to pay attention to. The first one is W. Liz gave me such a wonderful description of who some people think I am. But the big question is, the greatest question, and if you can answer this question, who am I? That's the question. And, it's just recently that I've kind of come to a new discovery of who I am. And it's what all the great sages are, and it's not that voice that's telling us this, the mind. It's the one watching, it's the witness. It's such a great discovery for me. I feel like I'm just brand new. I stand back there and I feel like this is the first time. I'm really kind of good at beginner's mind. This is the first day of my life. And I don't know how long I'm going to have, so I'm going to make it the best day. Because it could also be my last day. You never know. I mean, it's like, just make every moment count. Just make every moment. It's like, watch who you are. You're like witnessing this whole thing. You're so much more than you think that you are. You know so much more than you know you are. You're so much more glorious than you know that you are. And I hear Master Lin telling that all the time. It's like, such a beautiful world this is. Such beautiful beings we are. And then we say, oh, well, yeah, what the hell? Just another shitty day here in paradise, That's how we kind of go around. But we're in paradise, So I want to just make sure that I have 3 slides we're going to use today. There's no words on them either, but there's like a story with each one of them that I want to show at the end. So I want to make sure that I get that in. So I'm going to be kind of making sure that I take time to do that. So I'm going to say, I'll press my button 45 minutes. Is that right? Yeah. I'm used to teaching 90-minute classes, so I just go in, not even ever look at the clock, and then just go 90 minutes. So if you've been doing that for 40 years, pretty soon it's like that race car driver, zoom, 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 just do it. But sometimes you just have to pay attention. What the heck am I doing here anyway? But actually, I was really a good professor and a teacher, and I was best at being right in the moment. Just be there right now. Be there, right where you are. So there's a couple things people told me to kind of weave into the presentation, so I'll try to kind of weave in the stories so that kind of this fits together. Because I don't know what stories for sure I'm going to tell and what poems, but I know what poems I'm going to tell because I've made a point for each of these points to get a poem. Okay, but before that, I'm going to just tell you something. Every once in a while, I'm on this path. I've been studying with Master Lin for about 20 years. Every once in a while, there'll just be this breakthrough, where all of a sudden everything is just like something just broke through again, and you get to another level. And then pretty soon it's like, well, this seems like the normal, and then something else will happen. But on, I think it was October 8th of 1990. What year is this again? 2018. I had just gone through the certification to be a level 2 and level 3 teacher, and everything just seemed so new. There were just like these coincidences. I didn't think I could teach level 3, or 2. I was kind of arguing. I'll just teach level 1. Everything's in level 1. I just was afraid to go. And then Glenn Toby, some of you know Glenn, just kind of mentioned, says, well, you could just do this anywhere. I mean, he was just like saying, you could even set it up in your garage or something. Here's Liz right down the road is getting her garage renovated, so have a center there. Like these miracles just happen. But at that presentation, the next healing connection call. Some of you do the healing connection call. Some of you do. You're familiar with what I'm talking about when I say that. Master Lin talked about this little ritual for longevity. I think it's like a Taoist kind of a thing to do in the morning when you wake up. So I started doing that, and I've been doing it every morning now when I wake up. And I just know I'm going to have a good day. Just know I'm going to have a good day because I do this. And then I kind of like set the intention for the day. What am I going to be? Who am I going to be today? And I'm always kind of like asking that, what's my life purpose? Am I living my life purpose? What am I doing here anyway? And I'm still kind of asking that question. You know what's the greatest invention of all time? It's the question, because it leads to all the others. And I was just over at the Caribou over on 7th, not too far from your Hopkins, by Hopkins Crossroads. They're all by myself this morning for a while. And I look up and they have these New Year's resolutions. I was kind of reading them. And on the bottom it says, help others through. I said, wow, I wrote that down. That might be my life purpose. Helping others through the door. Pretty good. It's kind of like easy to remember. So I'm going to just share this little procedure that I go through every morning now. So, and I'd like to have you do it with me. If you're able to do this, touch the top of your head where the byway point is. There's a little point up there. It's the byway point. Okay? Now put your hands down and remember how that feels. Can you remember the feeling? Close your eyes. And just feel a wave of relaxation or of light coming down through your head and your neck and your shoulders. And it's just washing away all the stuff you don't need. And just breathe slowly, gently, and deeply as that light just washes through you. Now let it go along the spine and up through the spine. This light carrying away anything that you don't need to help you to become connected with the highest source. And now feel that wave of relaxation and this light just passing through your chest, your rib cage, your breasts, heart, lungs. Down through your arms it goes, through the upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, fingers, fingertips. Anything you don't need, you're just this light. You are the light. And then goes through all of the inner organs like the liver, the gallbladder, pancreas, stomach, spleen, and then through the intestines, the kidneys, bladder, reproductive organs. Just relax, let go of anything you don't need. This light is carrying it all away. Trust the light to just carry whatever you no longer need away, back into the universe. Through the pelvic area, the bottom of the torso, very important, just goes right through there. Hips, thighs, knees, calves, ankles, tops and bottoms of the feet. All of the stuff you no longer need so you can be one with the light. Just feel how good it feels to be a being of light. And now just pretend that you're here at the Healing Center, Spring Forest Qigong. There's a guy standing up in front. I think his name is Jerry or something like that, but What he really is just this person watching this person be Jerry. He's witnessing this, like, and he's making a presentation. And it's something like, I'm going to just remember the acronym, WSB. The big three things are, who are you? And then notice the synchronicities in your life as you're finding out who you are. And then just be that 100%. Be that what you're supposed to be. Why you were sent here in the first place, living your life purpose. And each day you do that. I say, why am I here? Each day, I'm going to just carry this out with me. I'm going to carry something with me. And make it a point to get maybe 3 things I could carry with me. If you can't get 3, get 2. But at least get one good thing today from this presentation that you carry and you put into action right away, so that it helps you get into that flow of life, to flow with that light. Feel how good it feels to know that at the end of this experience today, you're going to be putting this into use with a big smile on your face, filled with being a being of light. And take a couple of slow, gentle, deep breaths and just let that light light you up. And then wiggle your fingers and your toes and rub your hands together nice and long. Massage your face. Those of you that have been doing this, deliberately, middle and index fingers up along the bridge of the nose. And feel the beautiful face that's under there and the light going into this beautiful face. You have a face like nobody else. It's your unique face. And then massage the ears, like giving your whole body a full massage. Now you can roll out of bed, put your feet flat on the floor, and go about your day. But anyway, I do this, I adapted it a little bit, but I do that every morning now. And it just gives me this, so happy to be here. I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to be the best Jerry Wellik that I know how to be, who's somehow continuing to ask, what am I supposed to be doing here, and help me to fulfill that purpose. And I tend to remember things in stories. I don't somehow learn things sequentially, and I don't know, it's just a weird darn thing. Because you'd think that if anybody knows anything about special education, you have to be very methodical and consistent and whatnot, and I don't seem to be that at all. But I had a chairperson that really believed in me, and when I thought I'd screwed up, and I'd go in and I'd apologize, and I'd say, how can I do it better next time? And he'd say, surprise me. I guess I hadn't really screwed up at all, but sometimes we do, but the best judge for us that when we do screw up is to be an autotelic personality, and that's what I'm going to talk about, flow, but it's really talking about a lot of other things. But I'll tell you how I chose the topic flow and why I'm talking about flow. They asked me what topic I wanted to do here. The first presentation in January of the Healing Connection. What an honor. I just feel so lucky. There's no other place I'd rather be than right here. And that's really what it's about, is that your mind isn't one place and your body another place, and so much of my life I was not here. I was out in the future or worrying about something I did in the past. But when you're right here, right now, and you're doing the best that you know how, that's what it's all about for me. So I'll tell you some stories today, but I'm going to start with a poem, because I know that when I tell poems, it kind of helps me keep track of things. So this is a poem by Shel Silverstein, and it's documented. It's in a book called Falling Up. Isn't that a cool book? Cool title. It goes like this. This morning, my old Jack-in-the-Box popped out and wouldn't get back in the box. He cried, "Hey, there's a tack in the box, and it's cutting me through and through. There also is a crack in the box, and I never find a snack in the box. And sometimes I hear a quack in the box because the duck lives in here too." Complain, complain is all he did. I finally had to close the lid. Complain and Jack. So, did any of you ever hear that voice somewhere? The voice of the mind, sometimes even arguing? Well, I used to somehow pay a lot of attention to that voice. But that's just the voice, that's just the mind. And it's playing a very important part, but that's not who you are. You're the one that's observing this. And if you can get to that part of you where you really reside, the deeper part of yourself, then you can be yourself. And that poem helps me remind, I love that poem, and I learned it because I did it for my kids over and over, and I didn't know why I was doing it then. I mean, well, I knew it was to entertain them, and I could be myself. And I mean, I'm full of stories about things, but I'll tell you one. Here I'm supposedly, I worked with child development and whatnot, and my wife was, she was an early educator and a kindergarten teacher and whatnot. And so when I was busy being a professor trying to learn all my stuff, she said, "You have to read to the kids." This is when Heather was born. And I said, "God, but I'm so busy. I need to do this and this." But then I really started putting myself into it. It was just like making a good poem or a good story every night. It's the best thing that I ever did. They turned out pretty good in spite of me. But that was the best thing that I could do, is to spend a little bit of good quality time. And then I learned over time that the best thing you can tell your child as they're going to bed is, "I love you." And just let that message go in. But if that time right before we go to bed is so important, of how we spend that time, of how we program our mind, it's then what we end up dreaming about during the night. So that's a very, very important time. And I always had to learn the long way. I was just kind of, sometimes fighting things and whatnot. But it's just like when I could finally get in touch with that part of me that was the better part of me, then I could flow with the experience. So anyway, that I can remember poems really well, and I can remember stories. And this first thing is that W is that to know, to kind of get a handle on who you are, what are you about. And when you start wondering why you're here, what you're doing, there's little synchronicities and things that happen that give you a clue. A lot of times I'll just figure out that I still ask this question: how did I get here? What am I supposed to be doing? That was when I was a kid. I remember laying, I grew up on a farm, laying and watching the stars. And it was just this wonderful time. It's just like, say, how did I get here anyway? Asking these stars, how did this is the most beautiful thing in the world. And I still love that memory, because it's still like, I love that feeling of being able to be here. Like, how did I ever get here? And that's happened to me many, many, many times. I grew up on this farm in Iowa, and I thought I was going to be a baseball player. I thought I played center field. I made the first team. I wasn't very good in football or basketball, but in baseball I made the first team. There were only 11 guys out, so there's 9 on a team. But and I was the center fielder. I got to be the center fielder, and I just loved that. I figured that I was going to be a major league player, that's just what I wanted to be. Well, I never did, and I'm 75 now, so I probably won't be in the game. But that pretending, it was such a good thing. And I heard a story then. A good friend of mine, he taught creative writing at St. Cloud State for many years, Bill Meisner. He's published several poems and books about Kirby Puckett. And I love the story about Kirby Puckett. Some of you were Twins fans or know who he is. But they said that when he came to the stadium to play, he loved the game so much that he lit up the whole stadium. And I just love that story because that's how I thought of myself when I go to a classroom. I'm going to be like that center fielder. You know, I didn't get what I thought I was going to get. I got something better. I got something better. It's just like, so if you don't get what you think you want, there's something better is waiting for you. I mean, isn't that such a cool idea? It's just like you're living one story and then it's like, but there's something else, you don't understand it the same way. We have this little dog, and I used to be afraid of dogs. And I grew up on the farm, and my mom said, no dogs in the house. And for years, I didn't want the dog in the house. You know, I was just like, dogs carrying my socks away, and dogs doing this. Well, then when I finally started letting go of being afraid of dogs and saying it's okay, now I've got this dog. I mean, I wouldn't trade her for anything. And you're lucky that I got a haircut yesterday because I learned something about her. She's always trying to sneak up on me, and she'd get in my lap and start chewing on my beard. You know, and it kind of bothered me. But then my wife said, well, she's just trying to kiss you. Oh, then it's okay. You know, she's just trying to kiss. But anyway, my beard was a little bit kind of shaggy, so fortunately I didn't get a haircut yesterday, so I did get the beard. But if you just tell a little bit of a different story on things, everything changes. Everything changes. So just this idea of thinking about, well, that voice in your head, it's just that. It's not really who you are. There's something else. And sometimes you just get this evidence of this. I don't know, there's just little things. A lot of times I just don't even know if I should tell you all of the things about my life because you probably wouldn't believe them, of the things that happen. But when I got my degree from the University of Iowa, I thought I was going to be a coach, and then got to be really good in German. For some reason, I was good at languages. And I grew up in a Czech community, which is, you know, so I heard another language, and German just seemed so easy to me. And so once I started taking German classes, it was very easy for me, and I got a teaching job, you know, when I was 22 years old, teaching at a small town in Iowa, teaching German. And I was also, I had coaching certificates, so I could coach various things, gymnastics and track and baseball. And I was in this small town where they had girls' gymnastics, first year thing, so I was the gymnastics teacher. And I had a great job, and I was a high school German teacher. But my professor at the university said, you know, we could get you into a university in a Goethe Institute, and you could go to Germany and study. And this was in the late 60s, Vietnam was going on. And I said, well, you know, I'll stay in school as long as I can stay in school or teach. You know, I won't be going into the service, I'll be okay. Well, I resigned from my teaching position, and before I got out of the country, I got drafted. So, I mean, it was just like, but as it turned out, I went to see a recruiter, and he said, well, we can get you into the, you know, with your background, you have language background, and you'll probably get into this school in Monterey. It's the Defense Language Institute. And so I signed up for that. I thought, well, I'll go to the Language Institute. Well, I wanted to study something like Russian or Italian. I don't know what. Well, they assigned me to study Czech. In Czech, I grew up in a Czech community. But I didn't want to do it. You know, I was going to go and I was going to complain. I wrote a letter and I gave it to the person there when I got to the language school. He says, you don't want to do this. He says, you better study Czech, because if you complain about it, you're going to be in the infantry. There's this Fort Ord 7 miles away. So I tore up that letter, decided, I'll study Czech. That's good. And I mean, I was outstanding. I mean, how could I not be? I'd heard it, I didn't speak it, but I'd heard it my whole life, you know. So they thought I was brilliant. Had a couple languages. I mean, I hated basic training, I have to tell you that, but, you know, I thought, okay, I'm going to be going to Germany or the Czech Republic. This was in 1968. There was this. They offered me a commission to be an officer, so I accepted the commission. Thought this is really cool. I'm an officer now, and then I got orders to go to Vietnam. So I ended up going to Vietnam, and my MOS, I don't know if any of you know what that is, military occupational specialty, what I was supposed to be doing was to be an interrogator. I was scared as could be. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I mean, I just thought about going to Canada or blowing myself up. But I have 3 older brothers that were all in the service, and one of them was in the Navy at the time, and it was just like, there was that, a pull. It's like, and it was like that argument all the time. This argument in my head. I mean, I was just like going nuts. But the good thing about it was that I have an uncle that I could just kind of go and talk to, my Uncle Frank. And I told Uncle Frank, I says, I honestly will not shoot anybody. I will not do it. And when I would tell him, he would just laugh. He'd just laugh. I mean, just like, that's all you can do when you're in that kind of a situation. But nonetheless, and anyway, I ended up going to Vietnam, and what I thought was going to be the worst experience in my life actually ended up being the most outstanding thing. I mean, it was hell while I was there, and I mean, I could tell stories all the time about this, but so many unusual things of, there must be some reason why I'm still alive, because and when I left there, I was so screwed up that you wouldn't believe how screwed up I was. I mean, I drank, and I was in a car accident where I fell asleep. I was actually drunk. I was going 100 miles an hour on a gravel road. I mean, the person that found the car said, "How did anybody have lived through that?" I just floated out the window. I mean, I have some scars here. I still have a little scar here. There was a scoop shovel in the car. It was in the winter, I ran after the winter, and so I got beat over the head a little bit. But I mean, there's no reason. I mean, well, I guess there's a reason I'm still alive. But and I remember landing in this field, and I thought, how did I get here? Why am I here? What, still that same kind of that wondering. But there's a lot of things that I'm not very good at, and at that time I was not making very good, healthy decisions. But I'll tell you that I'm pretty good with people that have had problems. I didn't ever go through AA or anything either, and I just had an incident with one of the rainmakers, somebody that was just one of those people in my life. And that's the way my life has been. I just keep running into these rainmakers, sometimes on the road, sometimes on the, I don't know, my life is just like the most wonderful. It's just like I'm living a story. I sometimes feel like I'm this character in a story. And that reminds me of a story. I'll tell you a story. It's a Chinese tale about this village that was suffering from drought. Now they're having a drought right now somewhere, right? Is it in Australia? What's that? Fires? They're on fire? Yeah, we can send our prayers to them that the rains will come. But in this tale, this is an ancient tale from way back in China, a small village undergoing drought. And they did what they could do. They carried their icons from their temples through the fields, asking for prayers, asking for the rain. No rain came. They prayed to their ancestors, as was their custom. No rain. They even fired off guns and firecrackers to scare away the demons of the drought. Didn't work. So the elders got together and they said, what are we going to do? This was before they could transfer grain from one village to the other. And so if it got bad enough, that when they were really suffering, but if it got really bad, they would just die. So they decided to send off for a rainmaker. And when he came down this path. They saw him coming. They were expecting somebody big and powerful. And it was this little old man with a wispy white beard, kind of a little bent over guy. And they were disappointed. He didn't look like anything at all. So to hide their disappointment, they said, well, what do you need? He says, just a place to live. So they gave him a little hut at the end of the village, at the side of the village. And there he went around his business, and they were just thinking, nothing's going to happen. And on the third day, the rains came. And they thought, oh my God. So they went to him and said, how did you do it? What techniques can you tell us what you did so that we can help others? And we can pass this on, and we can do it again if it happens. He says, I didn't really ever get around to using any of my strategies or techniques. I just got myself back into the Tao, got myself aligned. When I came, I noticed that the village was not aligned. And he says, as soon as I got myself in sync and in Tao, the rains came all by themselves. And that's the way it is. All we really need to do, if we want to change the world, we have to start on the inside and get ourselves aligned, get ourselves in balance, and then the world changes. Frank was telling me a little story about a puzzle, and it just kind of like still puzzles me because I was a little nervous and I didn't get the whole story. But if you want to get this story from Frank, he's got a great story about puzzles.
It's not necessarily a great story, Jerry. I do crosswords and all kinds of cryptic things, and I knew his topic was go with the flow, and I took a little walk around, and I was going, go with the flow, go with the flow, and then I just spelled it backwards, and I just said, I never thought of that. Flow spelled backwards is wolf, so I'll go with the wolf, and we were just kind of, because we're word people, I just threw that out at him. So
isn't that a cool story? I just love stories like that, because it reminds me of stories. It's just one of the stories, when I knew that I came to St. Cloud State, I got several, well, I mean, it's just kind of was a weird thing about how I got there. I was going to enroll at the University of Minnesota when I got out of the Army. I mean, I'm leaving a lot of pieces out of this, but I had no idea what I was going to do. I was back in my hometown in Britt, drinking at night, and my mom was tearing her hair out, praying, I'm sure, as she did the whole time I was in Vietnam. I mean, I'm sure that her prayers saved me. I know it had a lot to do with it. But I thought I had to get out of there because I was working at the farmer's co-op, and it wasn't a good job for me. And I was trying to figure out something to do with my life, and I wrote this letter to drive a truck to deliver fertilizer. And my brother Joe says, he says, why don't we go over and have coffee? He says, what are you doing? I said, well, I wrote this letter. I think I'm going to maybe get a job driving for this other natural gas company. And Joe says, you're going to be happy doing that? I lied. I said, oh yeah, I think that would be fun. He said, how long do you think it'll last? In my mind, I thought, oh, maybe 2 weeks. But anyway, I just knew I needed to get on the road. And I thought, well, I'd heard about they had a good linguistics department at the University of Minnesota, and I drove up and I was going to enroll, and they said, well, you're going to have to pay out-of-state tuition. I said, what? I'm a citizen of nowhere. I just came back from Vietnam, and they said we have veterans preference, and I was just madder than hell. Madder than, being unreasonable. I think I was swearing. And they said, well, you can go see the complaints officer. And so I went over, and this guy He was a rainmaker for me. He listened, and he says, he listened to my story about, what I was at the language school and how I got interested in how different people learn languages. And I was actually a part of several studies through at Stanford University because I learned languages quickly. And there were some psycholinguists there, and there were some people doing these studies. And I said, I got so interested in that. And he says, well, I have this friend at St. Cloud who has a grant right now for guys like you that are soldiers that are coming back. And I'd like, I think you should go and talk to him. I said, St. Cloud, what is that? I was from Iowa. I didn't know what a St. Cloud was. So he says, yeah, it's about 70 miles up, and it's, at that time, you take Highway 10. There was no interstate. And he says, you come to this place, and there's a big, looks like a prison there. It's the reformatory. At that time, it's called the reformatory. Take a left. I said, okay, I can get there. I got a 63 Ford at that time. Got in my car. It was January 18th, 1971, and it was like 40 below or something like that. It was just like a terrible, and I'm going, and he had talked to this guy on the phone. His name is Stan Knox. He says he's going to be there till 4 o'clock, and I'm kind of keeping my eye on my watch, and God, here on the side of the road, somewhere near Becker, there's this young girl hitchhiking. Back in those days, people would hitchhike. And I was single at the time, and she was kind of scantily dressed, so I picked her up. Said, where are you going? She said, to St. Cloud. I said, I'm going to St. Cloud. And she starts telling me she's a student there, and she works at this Tom Liano's Pizza, all these stories. And, we're there pretty soon. And she told me how to get back, and I come back. It's just about 4 o'clock. And I don't know if you have any of you at St. Cloud State's campus, but there's a huge building there. It was called Stewart Hall, and the students were coming out from the door. And, I was just trying to make sure they got out because I wanted to make sure Stanley was still there, or this guy was going to meet. And I heard a voice. A voice behind me said, "This is the place." I turned around, there was nobody there. But I thought this must be the place. And I went up, so that, I found out where this office was, and there was this guy there. I'd never seen a guy like this before. He looked like these statues of the Laughing Buddha. He was a big guy. He was a huge guy, just huge. And he says, "I'm Stan Knox," and I said, "Well, I'm Jerry Wellik." And I started telling him, and when he told the story afterwards of who I was, he said, "We didn't know where this guy came from, but he was just convinced that he was in the right place and he was going to do something." He put me to work. I said, "I'm ready to go to school here, but I don't think I need any of these classes." I says, "I'm just ready to teach." Well, he says, "Well, we have this laboratory school," and he says, "Can you work with this kid? We have a 6-year-old that there," and he told me a little bit about him, but they couldn't do anything with him. He was just like out of hand, and he was going to be institutionalized. He'd been kicked out of the public schools and out of the parochial schools, and he was at the lab school, and they were trying to do something with him. And I guess I found out later they had 6 or 7 people that had given up, and the last one he'd kicked her in the shins, and she said she just couldn't take that anymore. He says, "Can you work with that kid?" I said, "Oh yeah." I had no idea what I was doing. Well, the following Monday, and I got on this grant program. They paid for my tuition and everything, and I started working with that kid, and he just ate right out of my hand. First time I came in, he says, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Jerry Wellik." And he said, "Well, I'm so-and-so." And it wasn't that easy, but it was like he called me a few names, and I'd been in the Army, and I was used to swearing. Just didn't, so a couple of times he called me some names, and I thought, well, I've been called worse things than that by the sergeants when I was in basic training. But it was just like, I don't know how did I know how to do that? And then my advisor was Floyd Ayers, and he said, just keep a journal of what you're doing. And he says, I was getting credits for doing this, so I just started writing down every day. I'd write notes of what was working with me. Floyd never read that journal, ever. I always figured he was going to read it sometime. But I taught myself, or just what I noticed. It was like one of these synchronicities. All these synchronicities happened. I mean, it just seemed like it was meant to be. Like this was, I taught there for a while. I was very successful. I got a job then in as an administrator. And I wasn't happy. I was 29 years old. I was the director of special education for 9 school districts, 29. And I was miserable. And so when I decided to quit, I just quit. And about that same time, Stanley calls again from St. Cloud. He says, well, we have a professorship open here. Would you like to apply? I says, well, yeah, I think I would like to apply. And as it turned out, they had a guy there. His name was Don Hoffman, who was unhappy as a professor. He was resigning. And we switched jobs. And then we were both happy. It's like an example of energy in the right place or the wrong place. But I took a 50% salary cut, but I was happy then. But I'm kind of going on and on here, I know. But the synchronicities, I got to get to that part. I ended up going to the University of North Dakota. And I mean, things just happened. The first day I was there, I met the president. I mean, it was like I went to check out the racquetball courts, and he was playing handball there. And I see this guy, he looks like a lumberjack or something. And he says, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to Wilkerson Hall. I think I might go to school here. And he walks with me, and I thought he was just some big old lumberjack, some guy. He said his name was Tom. And we get to Wilkerson Hall, and he says, oh, he's my guest, Jerry, he says. Was the president of the university. I got to meet the president the first day, and I mean, it was just like it was meant to be. But anyway, I studied there, and I got to study with a guy named Steve Harlow, and he was doing some work on this. He was developing a thing called the relational patterns model, and he asked. Well, I have to make this short. He asked me to make a presentation for a class that he was teaching at Moorhead State. And it just so happened he hurt his back or something. He was in the hospital when I was supposed to go, so I didn't know what my topic was supposed to be. Some of the other graduate students that had been there before me had a topic. And he was ill, and time kind of elapsed, and I go to Moorhead, and I get there early. I always go early, and I didn't know what my topic was supposed to be. I knew he was doing stuff with relational patterns. I thought, this is the oddest thing. So I go over to the library, to the section where they had these books about self-actualization and development and whatnot, and I'm walking to pick something out, and a book falls off the shelf. I said, this is crazy. I pick it up, and the name of the book is Beyond Boredom and Anxiety by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And he wrote the book on flow and did all this stuff. But it's like, whoops, this is not the one I wanted. But there were all these things about flow. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi was doing this stuff about flow. It's like when you're right at your very best. When you're just right at the optimal thing. And I'd read this article, I don't know if any of you follow the Minnesota Gophers, but they won a big ball game and there was I missed the game, I thought it was at 4 o'clock. But I read about it in the paper the next day. And the person that wrote about this, I mean, it was so exciting. He said that there was this one play, I don't know if I'm getting this all right or not, but it was like 4th down and 11 to go. And it was a big decision on what they're going to do because the Gophers needed to keep the ball. And they didn't take the easy route out. Here was the assistant coach, who was an interim guy, called a pass play. P.J. Fleck approves it. I mean, they were just going right for they were living right in that moment. They were in a state of flow. That's what flow is. You're just like right there. Everything is just right. You're just clicking. And so when you're in flow, there's like this, you're not bored. It's not bored at all, but you have to have the skills to be able to do it. You know, and so they were right here. They were in that state of flow. If you get out of your flow, that's essentially what this flow state is, it's not going to work. But you're the only one. Everything has to be together. But there had to be so many things, people working together, that everything just clicked at that moment in time. It was just like this perfect moment. And that's what I think life is about. This is that perfect moment. This could be it. You never know. You never know if that one that you meet on the road is the Messiah. You never know. This could be it. And I've had so many rainmakers in my life. They just show up. Just when you need them. Right there. And it's happening all the time. And so when I complain, and I've had sessions with Master Lin, I said, complain. I said, you know, they set a computer in front of me and I fall asleep. You know, it's like, and I'm, you know, saying, what do I do? Master Lin likes standing. I just laugh. He says, we can't be good at everything. I need people like Liz and Frank and to help me through, carry me through. I'm just a part of a team. I'm just a small little part. And I mean, I used to think that I was a failure in so many ways. And when I go to apologize, they say, oh, you were the best. I don't even read those evaluations and stuff, you know, but I get like 99% of them. Best teacher I ever had. Wish he told more stories. But you know what? So many times I just pay attention to that one and said, didn't know what he was doing. That one would stick out. Okay, I'm sorry. Those of you that I've offended, I don't know what I'm doing. Just telling a few stories. But I had, my Uncle Frank was a rainmaker. I don't have time to tell you all these stories. There's so many wonderful things that happened. So anyway, the 3 points that I was trying to get at here, because I want to make sure I get those slides, because I don't want to fail on my first attempt to use a PowerPoint. But the 3 points, whoops, this is a quote I like very much. To see ourselves as others see us is the most salutary gift. Hardly less important is the capacity to see others, whoops, that's supposed to be others, as they see themselves. It's from Aldous Huxley. Let me say that over again, so if anybody wants to watch the video and get this again. To see ourselves as others see us is the most salutary gift. Hardly less important is the capacity to see others as they see themselves. How they think of themselves, if you can kind of join their world then. Because they may not think of themselves as you do. But there was one of my favorite teachers that I taught with, he's retired now, Nick Miller, had a sign on his door. It said, my teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was. Isn't that brilliant? My teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was. Liz thinks I'm smarter than I am, so I'll be smarter than I am. Why not? What am I going to lose? She's a lot better than me, a lot of things, keeps me on track. just exactly the right person, just a rainmaker, showed up right at the right time on the road, walking our dogs, find out we're both studying with Master Lin. Just met a guy this morning, and just really did. Had a great conversation over at the Caribou. We were the only ones in there. We just talked for about 2 minutes, and I'll never forget the conversation. It was just like, it was cool, happening all the time. I was kind of nervous about what I was going to talk about today, but just bear with me. I just tell stories. That's who I am. But the 3 points I was going to make, that's what I was getting at here, was, oh, whoops. Is that it? Maybe this is it. Must be. Who are you anyway? You're that there's a greater part of yourself. You're not that talk. You're just the witness of all this. And I mean, it's just kind of hard for me to grasp what this is, but there's some part of us that's much greater than we even know. It's inside of us. John Denver's song about it's in each and every one of us. This light of that we're connected, we're a part of the light. These synchronicities, these things are happening all the time, just like that book fell in front of me. I guess that's what I'm supposed to teach from today. Became what was kind of my philosophy for the last 30 years, is that state of flow. Now when I study with Master Lin, flow means something totally different for me. I didn't even understand it at all before, but it's something that's flowing inside of us. The energy is flowing all the time. Just let it go through you. Just let it go through you and be with the flow. Don't try to hold on to the past or the future, because when you're here now, you can't do anything about the past. If you're in the past, you're going to be into regret. If you're off into the future, you're going to be anxious. Be here now, as Ram Dass, who just passed away, said. Be here now, right now. This is when it's happening right now. This is heaven on earth right here. This is it. Look how beautiful it is. Look at how beautiful your people are. You're beautiful. And I love you. I can't help but love you when I see you. I've had personal contacts with some of you, got to work with you and help heal. And what a privilege it is. How we learn to heal each other. We need each other. I think my life purpose is what I read on that Caribou sign this morning. Help others through the door. You get stuck. You're at an impasse. What do you do now? Well, you meet the traveler on the road, the rainmaker. And there's the rainmaker, it's right there. Just notice, could be a sign on the Caribou. Could have been the trivia today, or what? You don't know what it is. It's like some puzzle. So I'm going to get this out of here because I want to make sure I do this, what I was supposed to do. I'm going to get this out of the way. This. Now, get this out. Do I just press that button? Is that all? Just the one on the right?
I think so.
Let's see it. Ah.
There we go.
This is the road on which I live. Travelers come here, and it's just a road, but it's a pretty important road for me. It's the road that I walk on. And I forgot to give you the poems I was going to give you. I do have a poem about the road. Let me read that poem real quick here. There's a saying, it's a kid's poem by Beatrice Schrenk, the arranger. She says, keep a poem in your pocket and a picture in your head, and you'll never feel lonely at night when you're in bed. The little poem will sing to you, the little picture bring to you a dozen dreams to dance to you at night when you're in bed. So keep a picture in your pocket and a poem in your head, and you'll never feel lonely at night when you're in bed. So here's the poem. This is by Antonio Machado. Traveler, your footprints are the only road, nothing else. Traveler, there is no road. You make your own path as you walk. As you walk, you make your own road. And when you look back, you see the path you will never travel again. Traveler, there is no road, only a ship's wake on the sea. So this is the road I walk down every day. Peaceful Heart Qigong, if you look carefully, it's behind those trees. Can't see it in the picture, but you have to use your imagination. That's where Liz lives. And it's a very peaceful place out in the woods. And Peaceful Heart Qigong, isn't that cool? I get to work with Liz White, best teacher I know. So the next slide, this is what our trees look like when there's water. There's lots of snow in them. This was taken last week. My wife got this shot. But sometimes I can be in the clouds and in heavens, but one of my resolutions is to be here now and to just appreciate and love this earth. Master Lin, in his last Healing Connection talk, talked about 4 things where the energy and power comes from. One is to honor the earth, the things of this earth. Another is the heavens, the skies, that energy. The third is our ancestors. Give thanks for all of those ancestors that have been passed down through us, to us. And the fourth one, what the heck was the fourth one again? Anybody listen to the Healing Connection? There's always like one missing piece of the puzzle. Can't think of it right now. Do you know? Oh, okay, that's good. It's good when you can present something and then you just keep the people kind of on the edge of their seats. You know, like the 1001 Nights, you know, like the story goes on. Come back next time, I'll have it for you. Well, this is when I was in Vietnam this summer. I was there 50 years ago, and for my wife's birthday, year before last, she said we're going to go to China for a couple of weeks, and so she set it all up, and we went with Top China Tours. I guess I shouldn't give promotions, but that's who we went with. But it was a great group to travel with. We were in China for 2 weeks, and none of the other people in our group were from the United States. So they spoke different languages. We had 3 women from Hanoi. We had a couple from Dubai, a couple people from India. And so we kind of all spoke different languages, but we had a tour guide. And it was so interesting for me to learn with other people, to go to these. I'd never been to China before, and it was very, very interesting to me. But then as an add-on, we spent a week in Vietnam while we were there. And again, my wife set up the tour. We were going to go to the 4 major points where I had been in when I was in Vietnam. And so we went to what I always call Saigon, and Da Nang, and Phu Bai, and Hue. Well, when I got there, it wasn't what I thought it was. It was so different. I wanted to go and show her the places where I'd been, and what had been an airstrip there was now an international airport. So the place where I was working, you know, was, I couldn't even get my bearings. And, you know, for a while I was just like, oh my God. And then in Saigon, it's just like the motorcycles on the road. I couldn't cross the street. I was going to show off to her about all these stuff. I had to close my eyes as she helped guide me across the street. I mean, it was just like, I was scared. And I mean, so the first, you know, it's just like, oh my God, here we come all this way and we spend a lot of money and I'm not getting to do, you know, I was kind of like, I have to remember this is like, if things don't work out the way you think they're going to, it's because something better is waiting. I know that. Well, then we went down into the Delta. I'd never been down there. When I was in Vietnam, I just traveled north from Saigon I think north, yeah, I think so. But anyway, down south in the Delta, and it was marvelous there. It was just like the markets and it was just fun. So we just had a good time. The food was great. But then we flew up to Hue, and Hue is spelled H-U-E. I had a counterpart when I was in Vietnam, and this is another story. I was so upset and angry one time. I used to get angry for like, I think I've let go of a lot of that now, but for no reason. But I guess there was a good reason for this one. I'm not the most organized person. I had a whole bunch of stuff in my closet. And my wife said one day, just do something with that mess. Well, I put it all in a plastic bag and carried it out to the garbage. And I threw away all my memorabilia from Vietnam. I was just like I wanted to get rid of it. Well, you can't get rid of things that way. It doesn't work well. So I don't have that stuff to pass on. But there was a little plaque I'd gotten from my counterpart, and it had his name on it, and he had a map of Vietnam. But anyway, that's who I wanted to go back. I wanted to say thank you and forgive me for not being a very good soldier. I mean, at the time I didn't think I was, but I did the best I knew how. But anyway, we're in Hue, the city that 50 years ago was just bombed. And I mean, I could hardly bear to be there when I saw what we had done to this beautiful, beautiful city. And here it's all rebuilt again. And it's just gorgeous. The city's beautiful. But the thing in Vietnam is you have to be careful about the water, or what water you drink. So we were very careful about that. But we needed a lot of water. So it was May 5th, I think, 105 degrees there. It just was kind of like all the conditions when I was there. I loved the heat, and my wife was complaining about the heat. She's got to get to the hotel. I'm dying. This is just right for me. And nonetheless, but we were out of water. I can speak a little bit of Vietnamese, so I asked where we might buy some water on the street there in Hue, and they said, oh, down the street here, and take a left, and there's a little shop, and the guy sells water. Well, we go over there, and it reminded me of like those little shops used to be in when I was in Saigon and other cities there. There was an older lady, I think she was old, like it's hard to tell, but she was just sleeping on a mattress there in the little shop. And I came in and I said, want some water? I was carrying a little bottle. I said, want some water? So she calls to this guy, and he comes out, this guy. I don't know if it was her son or who, and we're trying to explain to him that we want some water. And I thought I was saying water in Vietnamese wasn't working, and I had this bottle and pointing, and we wanted to buy two. I said two big ones. He wasn't getting it. My wife's standing there sweating, saying, I mean, it was me. I'm just saying, it's not working. So I just shut up. And I just did the old trick that works every time for me. Saw a little sun in his heart and a sun in my heart with a lotus under it. Took a couple, 3 slow, deep breaths. And he went back in the back room and brought out a big water. And I said, another one. And he got another one. And then he was so happy and I was so happy. And that moment my wife got a picture of us being happy with this guy. And it was the best moment of my life. He was holding onto my arm. He didn't want to leave me go. And it wasn't the same guy that I worked with. I don't know. It's just, and I don't know his name. Doesn't matter. But for me, he was a rainmaker, and we got the water. And it's 10:15, and sorry if I told too many stories today, but how could I end this? Maybe a poem. This is a poem by Ted Hipple. I like this because I was a linguist, and it's called The Traditional Grammarian as Poet. It goes like this. Haiku, yuku, he, shirit, kuz, wiku, yuku, deku, denku. I like the poem so much, can I do it again?
Yeah.
Haiku, yuku, he, shirit, kuz, wiku, yuku, deku, denku.